All right. How are we feeling about yesterday? Accomplished a lot. We got our first full stack app running. We hit the peak window madness. We will not have any more windows after this, which hopefully is a little bit of a relief for you guys. But we are in full swing, full stack. We're going to do our to-do list app today. But how are we feeling? Do we have any questions? Do we want to address anything at the beginning of the session before we dive on in?
So all the stuff that we did yesterday was like, the API server and everything.
Yep.
Do we have to do that every single time, like that same setup all the time?
Only at the beginning of a project. So most of the time when you start working at a company, they're already going to have an API server set up and you're going to be working on the existing one. So we will get practice setting them up a couple more times from scratch, but for the most part, you'll be working with an existing one, setting up, adding additional endpoints, modifying those, that kind of thing. You won't always be doing it from scratch. But if a client comes to you and says, hey, I want an app that does this, then yeah, you will be doing it from scratch. You will be setting that up. We'll be using something called the ORM, an object relational mapper called Sequelize, starting next week. And then we will also be learning how to set up auth. Ryan's going to come back and do a 2-day session on setting up authentication, understanding how to store user information in the database, all of that kind of stuff. But we've got a lot more practice to do on some basic API stuff in the next week before Ryan comes in. Any other questions? Okay. In that case, I am going to try and do one live share tonight so that you can have all of the code combined into one window instead of having it be in two separate ones. So I'm hoping that will help, but let's see how this goes. So we are going to head to my code to week 17. We're going to make our day 4 folder. We're going to take our day 4 folder and open that in VS Code. We are going to make a new folder inside of that, and we're going to call that backend. And then I am going to right-click, open an integrated terminal, and I'm in my backend folder. Because I'm in my backend folder, and if I run a PWD, I can make sure I'm in my backend folder. If you are not in your backend folder, you would CD backend and hit enter. That is only if you are not in your backend folder already. So confirming that you are in your backend folder, we are then going to, I don't know why it asked me to install a helper tool every single time. Stupid. We'll just do the update. Okay, try this again. PWD, make sure I'm in my backend folder. Because I am, I'm going to npm init-y. You will notice that makes my package.json folder for me. If you would like to update, you can update. Just hit that update button. We'll give everyone a minute in case they have an update that they need to install.
Did you I'm sorry, I was a little late yesterday, like 10 minutes maybe. And did you go over the npm init-y yesterday?
Yeah, the npm init-y is what makes our package.json file for us. It basically gives us a place to install npm modules into.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Max, if I'm not in the backend, what do I do again?
CD space backend enter, and that will CD you back into the backend.
Thank you.
So we should so far have our backend and our package.json. We're gonna do all of our back end setup first, and then we're gonna switch and do all the front end setup after that. So now that I've npm init-y, there are two things that I know, three things I know I am going to need from npm. I'm going to need npm install, and I'm going to need pg Postgres. I'm going to need express, and I'm just separating these with all a space. And I'm also going to need cores. So I'm going to go ahead and install all three of those: npm install, pg, express, and cores. Shaquota, what's up?
Sorry, so when I made the folder, I made it under my day 3, right? In my week 17.
Day 4.
Mm.
Yes.
Because it's saying no such file or
Share
but
your screen.
do we have to copy day 3 to make it day 4?
Nope, we're doing this all from scratch.
Okay, I'll share my screen.
Rain, sorry, I didn't mean to send that to you. I meant to send that to the whole class. Okay. Okay, so you haven't made your backend folder yet in day 4, which is why you can't CD into it. So make backend, and then you can CD into it.
Okay.
So if you are following along in your backend folder, you should have a node modules and a package.json. Now we are going to right click on the backend folder and do a new file and make sure that that server.js is at the same level as everything else. We don't want node modules, server.js in node modules, but we do want it in our backend folder. If you've got all of that set up, live share link coming your way. And Shaquota, you can share your screen. Okay, so somehow your terminal is all the way up at the home level. Whenever we see that tilde, that means that we're all the way up at that home level. So what I like to do is go ahead and close out of your terminal entirely, then right click on your backend folder and open an integrated terminal. And that now has us at the right level. So when we right click over here, it opens the terminal to the right spot. Now we can do our npm init-y and our npm install express cores and pg. The order of those does not matter. And then we do the last step of new file server.js, and you're all caught up. Anyone else need help?
Yeah, how did you, what was that last step that you did with getting the? It's like my back end is not opening with the packages, they're just underneath it, it's not in it.
So you have to make sure that when you do your npm init and your npm install in the terminal, you're in the backend folder. If you're not in the backend folder, and I can confirm that by running pwd and seeing that I am, if you are not, you cd space into your backend and hit enter. Then you have to go rerun those commands and delete the other files. Okay, now that we've got our backend set up, we need to get our server coded out. So there are a couple things we need. We need Express, which we're going to require from Express. We need cores, which we're going to require from cores. And we need PG, which we are going to require from PG. We need to also say, hey, our server is going to come from Express. Our server is going to use cores. And we also need to say, hey, we are going to connect to the database by going to PG, setting up a client, and specifying that the database we are connecting to is something. We're going to come back to that. We also are going to DB connect. You're going to server.get, and don't worry, I'm going to give you a break after this and not rush on to the next step. A rec.res, that res.send something like server online. And finally, we are going to server.listen on 3001. That says console.log server online port 3001.
Max, while you're giving us time, can you explain why the client is capitalized again?
This is a weird PG thing that they specify in their documentation. So if we go to NPM and look at PG, and we go down to where's there? Where's their documentation link? Why is that not coming up? Okay, let's go to their homepage, maybe. There we go. That was weird. If you go to their documentation and go down to their getting started, you see that they have a capital C here, and then they have this like new client. We use the capital C to initialize that over there. So we kind of just have to follow what they say in their documentation. They happen to use a capital C, so we have to use a capital C. And now you've got me questioning myself to make sure that I did that right. Yep, I did not. I forgot a word here. I missed the word new right there. So make sure you've got the word new to set that up. We are going to use the npx nodemon command. We're going to see a different way of getting that set up in 1 second. We haven't done that yet. Jen, you aren't supposed to delete the node modules unless your node modules ended up outside of the backend folder, and then you can delete them.
Okay, no, it's in there.
Okay, then you're good.
Wait, is this a new one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So should I change that in the old one too, or no?
In the what do you mean? From last night's code?
Yeah.
No, we're not doing anything on last night's code. This is all from scratch.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure.
Anyone need help? Everyone good so far? Okay. Now, in the past, we have done npx nodemon server.js in the terminal. And if we hit enter on that, we should get our server online port 3001. But it's kind of annoying to have to remember what our start command is for the server. We can actually tell npm how to start our server. So what we're going to do is we're going to go inside the package.json file. We're going to go over to the scripts section, and we're going to add in a new thing here that says start. And the way that we tell it to start is by running npx nodemon server.js. Make sure you've added a comma at the end of the line right above it. And you've got this start in here with the quotes in the right spots. Now, because we have told our server how to start, we can actually go down to the terminal, Control C to stop it, and npm start to start it. And it will do the exact same thing because we told it how to start. Now we can use npm start and have it start up the server using NodeMod.
I only have line 13 through 16 in the package JSON. Did I do something wrong with that? From dependency down.
You probably missed the install command. Do you have Cores Express and PG?
Yeah, just dependencies, Cores Express and PG.
And if you scroll up, there's nothing else up here.
Nope. It starts on line 1.
Just copy and paste mine. Shannon, share your screen. Okay, so everything looks right here. You were missing the word new that I left out in my code that I added in. If you want to give me a remote. Thank you. I got this wrong the first time. You need the word new there. And now you're online and good to go.
And what were we doing in the terminal again? Sorry.
Now that you've got that start command in your package.json, you can do npm start down in the terminal, and it will know to run npx nodemon server.js.
So just for clarity,
Mhm.
at the time we start a project and we want it to sort of load by itself, we need to put this start into
Yep.
stuff.
I mean, you don't need to, right? You could always run the npx command instead, but by what we're basically doing is aliasing it. We're saying, hey, npm, when we tell you to start, this is how we want you to start. Okay, if all of this is working, we can open a new tab and go to localhost 3001 in Chrome, and we should get our server online. Okay, we've done all of that. Now let's go back to our server.js. We left our database blank here. Why did we leave our database blank here? Because we want to set up a new database for the to-do app that we're going to set up today. So we are going to head over to Postgres, command space POSTG, enter. Make sure our Postgres is running. If it is not running, go ahead and hit that start button. Once you have this started, it is safe to close this out. Don't quit it, but we can just close it and have that run in the background. Then we are going to pull open Beekeeper. In Beekeeper, we are going to double click to connect to our local DB. Again, that front screen, we double click on local to connect us in. Then open up a new tab for a blank query space, and we are going to create database to do.
You just want us under our general name, not the playground.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which one you run it in, because we're creating a new one. So I'm going to create database to do. I hit my run button. Now I want to hit the refresh up here in the top left. click on my hack up state, drop down to my to do, and I should be good to go from there. So close out of some of this old stuff. You can close out of everything that we have open. Now we need to think ahead a little bit. We've got all of this stuff over here because we haven't made a table yet. We need to make our table, which is going to store our tasks. So let's think about what we need to store here. We're going to create table. The table that we are going to create is called to-dos. And then we always should have an ID. And the ID is going to be a type of serial. And we're also going to say that is the primary key. Almost every table in your database will have an ID, and that's usually the primary key. From there, we also need to think about what's up, Jen?
I'm just falling behind. My beekeeper doesn't look anything like yours, so I'm a little lost.
Do you have local in the top left under your save connections?
No, I have my name and then the playground.
Okay, so click the little plus to open a new tab, and then you can run the create database command.
Add a database.
Share your screen. Cancel on that. In the command that you're typing, create database, space to do, run in the bottom right. Then the refresh up at the top by the word Postgres.
This one?
Nope. Oh, click on that one again. Just wanted to bring it back. Refresh right here. Then click on Postgres and switch to do. Then clear this out and type in what I've got typed in.
I can't see yours.
And then you're caught up. Okay, so in our to-dos, now we've got to think about what else we've got to create. Well, we probably have to store the name of the task. And I'm kind of hoping that our to-dos aren't like a paragraph long. If they were, we would use the text data type. But because ours aren't going to be super long, we're just going to say varchar 255. We also want to keep...
Can you share your screen?
Max, share
Yeah.
your screen.
I typed it in because you were talking, but you didn't look over.
Thank you. Amberlyn, the last terminal command was npm start. Okay, and then we also need to keep track of whether this task was done or not. So this is going to become a Boolean. Okay, you got all of that done. We're going to come over here. We're going to hit the run button, and we should get a no results down here. But what's more important is over here, when we click on a little drop down, we see our ID, our name, and done. Now, we're going to pump the brakes on Beekeeper a little bit here. So go ahead and minimize Beekeeper. We don't need Beekeeper. Once you get your to-dos table created, one thing to keep in mind before you minimize it, though, look at your database name. Our database name is to-do without an S. The name of the table is to-dos with an S. If yours is different, that's okay. But the database name is what we need in the next step. Shannon, what's up?
When I run it, it just gives me, it says there was a problem, there's a syntax error, and I'm looking and I don't see it.
Share screen. We're not creating database. We are creating a table called to-dos. We already created the database.
Damn it. Okay. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, so we're going to take the name of our database right here. If yours has an S on it, it's fine. Just keep in mind, we're going to take whatever is typed in right here in this dropdown. Go ahead and minimize your beekeeper. We're going to put beekeeper away for now. And inside our server.js in the database section, we're going to put our database. Okay, now we are done with our back end. For now, we've got to go set up our front end to accomplish all of this. So we're going to go down into our terminal. We're going to Control-C to stop it. We are going to CD space period. 2 periods means go up a level. So I'm now leaving my backend folder and I'm going up to my day 4 folder. So when I hit enter on that, I should have D4 in my prompt. And just to be extra sure, I'm going to do a PWD and make sure I'm in my day 4. Now that if I'm not in my day 4, I'm not going to run through all the other commands because that's going to cause issues. So make sure you're in your day 4 before you run any of this. Now that I'm up in my day 4, I'm going to npx create React app my front end. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on that. I'm going to let that think. Now you guys will have access to my front end through this live share link, but I am going to open my front end in another window. So I'm going to go back to my Finder. I happen to have my week 17, my day 4 open. I'm going to grab my front end and drag that into another VS Code window. Now that I've got that in my other window, I'm going to right click on my package.json, open an integrated terminal, and npm start that sucker up. That is going to give me my React.
Okay, I didn't make my back. Okay, so this is all messed up now, and I'm like super confused about how to fix it.
Okay, share screen. Okay. So when we run, we really have to be careful. We don't run a command unless we know where we are before we run the command. So what happened here is you ran npm init and npm install, but you weren't inside the backend folder. Because of that, you've got a package.json out here that's got express and pg in it, but it's supposed to be inside this backend folder. So what we need to do is delete out the stuff that's outside of the folder. And again, running the command isn't enough. We can't just come down here and do our npm install. We've got to get to the right spot first. So I'm going to PWD and I see I'm in my week 17. So I need to go down into my day 4 and PWD again, that shows me I'm in my day 4, and then I need to CD again into my backend. Now that I'm down in my backend, when I npm install PG, Express, and cores, when I look in my package.json, we'll see all 3 of those are in the right spot. So then we can say, okay, we can npm start here, and that starts our backend. Now that we've got that up and running, we need to get our front end up and running. So I'm going to Control C to stop. I'm going to CD space ... enter. That's going to bring me back up to my day 4 folder. I have to make sure I'm in my day 4 folder first. Now that I am, I can npx create React app front end and hit enter. And that is going to make my front end folder for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop open our front end in, come on. I'm going to let you do it. I'm going to escape. Go ahead and open that front end folder in VS Code. Okay, now that we've got this open, we can right click, and Kenny, this is your answering your question. We're going to right click on package.json, open an integrated terminal. Down in the terminal, we are going to npm start. And once the React logo shows up, you are all caught up.
Okay, thanks so much. And then another question that I had was for the little, I have like 2 package lock JSON. Should I delete one of them?
I just fixed everything. There shouldn't be any of them, any duplicates.
Okay.
There should be a package.json and a package lock.json.
Yeah, I have 2 of them. One of them says JS next to it, and then another one has the curly brackets.
Share your screen again.
Okay.
While she's doing that, can I just ask a question? So once
Yep.
I open the terminal by right clicking on package.json,
Mhm.
I do the npm start.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Okay, so let me go back to that really quick. Like this right here. So for like the back, like should these both be here?
I have no idea how you ended up with this one. So we're gonna get rid of that one, and then you're good to go.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
All good. You can also close that tab. We don't ever want to edit package lock.json. That's how npm works, kind of like under the hood.
Max, do you see the note? It looks like she might have the same thing someplace else.
Yep. We're good. Anyone else need help? Do we have a Jen?
My local host has server and online.
Change your 3001 to 3000, and that should fix the issue.
The terminal tells me the server online port is in 3001.
But our front end, our React code is in 3000. So we should have.
Now it's telling me the site can't be reached.
Okay, share your screen. Switch me to your front end code. Your React code. Okay, so you're doing it all in one window?
I guess so. I mean, I only had the one window open from earlier, and now I'm.
Okay, so if you're doing it in one window, we have to have 2 terminals open. So we're going to right click here on the package.json inside the front end, open an integrated terminal, then npm start this, and that will bring up your 3000. But now you have to keep in mind, because you're doing it all in one window, that you've got this terminal, which is running your back end, and then you have this terminal, which is running your front end.
Okay, how do I do that in two different well, that is two different terminals in that one little window.
Correct.
All right.
You
awesome.
can actually split your terminals and then change.
Oh, but it shows me front end and back end, so it shouldn't be too
Yep.
hard.
Let
And then
me-
the 3000 is the only one we need to have open.
3000 and 3001. These two are the only two that you need. Oh, but in the browser,
Yeah.
you don't need 3001.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Hey, Max, before you go on, I don't know, but my localhost 3001 is saying the site can't be reached. Is that fine?
That's fine. We're gonna fix that in 1 second.
Thank you.
Amberlyn, the live share for my front end is in the same link as my back end. So you can access both of them from one window. I'm going to try and do it that way because it's one less window to keep open. Anyone else?
For the 3001, it says server and online in the local host window.
Our back
Oh,
end might
that's-
not be running yet. So
Okay.
here, let's go into that.
But it's at least connected, right?
Well, so our 3000 is up and running. Our front end is up and running. Now for our back end, I'm going to go back to my back end window because I have two separate windows open. My front end's over here. My front end terminal's running over there. In my back end terminal over here, I don't have anything running. So right now I have to PWD to find out where I am. I'm in week 17, day 4. I am not in my backend folder. And to prove that, if I ls, I can see in my day 4 folder, I've got both my backend and my front end. Because of that, I'm going to cd into my backend. Now that I am in my backend folder and my terminal prompt is telling me I'm in my backend, I can npm start that, and I should have my 3001 up and running. So my terminals right now, one of them says server online at port 3001. The other one should have the error message about this will make the message go away. And if we scroll all the way up, it will show me compiled successfully. Does anyone not have compiled successfully at the top of their terminal or server port 3001 in their backend?
Can you just go over the last step that you did, please?
Yep. In my terminal, I have to know where I am. So I'm going to PWD, and it's going to show me I'm in day 4. In order to know what is in day 4, I ls, and it shows me my backend and my front end folder are here. My objective is to get the backend server running. So I am going to cd into my backend and hit enter. And then I can npm start here, and that will bring my backend server back online.
Thank you.
Took an hour yesterday. We're down to 45 minutes today. We'll get it down to 30 next week. Before you know it, we're going to be cranking out servers left and right.
Okay, so I just have one more question. It's not like I don't need help with anything. I was just wondering, should we use one VS code window for front end and back end, or should we have it open in different ones? Like, which one would be more productive?
I personally always use 2. For me, it is very confusing for me to have it all in one window and then start writing JSX and realize I'm accidentally in my backend code, not in my front end code. So for me, I like separating it out. but I also work on two 28-inch monitors. And so I've got enough screen real estate to spare. Having to do it all on one drives me nuts. You guys have even more windows to deal with, but at least you have the second monitor there, right? So I like to separate mine out. I work with coworkers who have it all in one window, and they think I am nuts for having multiple windows to put it in. So I can't tell you which one to do. If it makes sense to do it all in one and it makes it easier because you're not juggling as many windows, that's okay. So I can't tell you like, oh, definitely put it in two separate ones. I can tell you don't accidentally mix up your back-end code and your front-end code, like have those in two separate folders. But as long as they're in separate folders, you can do everything in one window, and that's totally fine.
Okay.
Not the way I do it, but that doesn't mean that it's not the right way, right? It's totally your call. Kenny, if you bet me, I could probably do it in a minute. I can do it pretty quickly. Maybe two. Danny, what's up?
I'm broken. I'm going to share screen.
Go for it. Okay, well, the good news is,
And I did all the things you told me to, and I don't understand why I said the things I did above.
so this is where we lean into our error message, and it says cannot find backend index.js. And we're like, what you smoking, Willis? Because we don't have an index.js. So I'm going to go look in your package.json. And you've got your start command.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna CD up one level, and I'm gonna ls. What the?
You're welcome.
Kenny, stop confusing me. Oh. You are just trying to sever something, aren't you?
Oh, what the F? Oh, bananas.
Aha.
Thanks, Max.
No problem. Jen, you're up.
Why don't I just stay unmuted? Is it normal for my terminal to not be taking any commands after it says server online port 3001? Because it's still in the web page is just giving me the server and online. Is that good?
If you're on 3001, it should say server online. If you're on 3000, you should have React.
Okay, cool beans. Thank you.
Yep. And when the server is running, it like locks out the terminal because the server is running. So Control C would stop it, but then you have to start it over again to get it running.
I tried. Oh, maybe I was doing Command C. Whoops.
Yeah, don't get me started on why it's Control and not Command. I mean, it's not Command because we can't copy, but then you'd think it would be like S for stop, but whatever. Anyone else going once? Can I kick on speed demon mode here? No? Okay. Let's build out an interface in React. So I'm gonna move my React code over to the side, or my backend code over to the side. If you want to minimize it, you can. We're gonna focus on the front end for now. So everything I'm doing, I'm gonna head over to my front end. I'm going to go to my src, to my my CSS, app.css, clear all of that out. I'm going to go to my app.js. I'm going to go to my header and delete all of that out. I'm going to go delete out my logo. And now I'm ready to go. So I'm going to H1, and I'm going to say to-do list app. I'm going to set up a form. My form is gonna have an input. I'm also going to make that self-closing. I'm gonna say the type on this is text. I'm going to add in a button that says add. Maybe we'll throw a label in that says new task. I'll throw a type of submit on this. And we'll add a on submit that says add task. And we will const add task, which is going to get the event. And it is going to event.prevent default.
Yeah, your live share is lagging really hard.
I'm not tracking the live share on my screen. Should I be in a different window or something?
You gotta click that little button. Like if you go all the way down and unclick on Max, so you have to make sure like where it says Max Matthews, there's no black dot inside the colorful dot, and then it'll follow him.
You want to share your screen on how to do that?
Yeah, I gotta see. I don't know. You said it's the same live share though. I don't have to log into another one or something.
It should be the same live share for both the front end and back end, but it might be that because I created, like, Allie, is yours like up to date? Can you just see the code that I just typed in?
Yeah, mine's is up to date, so like I can see everything that Max is doing.
Okay,
So
share your screen so the rest of the class can see what icon to click on.
okay,
I probably can't see it as the host.
okay, can y'all see it? So like I come over here in a live share, boop, and then what I'll do is like if you click it, it won't follow him, so you have to unclick it, and then it'll just like if you see that his yellow thing will pop up, and then it'll show everything that he does.
Oh yeah, but can go to my front end because all of that code that I just wrote was in my front end, and then src and then app.js. Yeah, and all of my code is in there.
Oh wait, so it didn't update?
Well, all of the code that I just typed in is in there.
Yeah, like
Okay.
I see the code, like, but it doesn't like.
It's just going slow. Like Max will type something and then it'll come to us like a little bit after.
I'm watching it right off of like the Zoom, so I think everything is just going.
Yeah,
'Cause-
mine was doing the same thing. I think it was because I was following somebody else.
I can kick you all out and
Fine now that I did that little Max Matthews.
okay.
No, wait, can you say how you did that again?
Yeah, so Shakota, what you do is you come down here. Sorry. And then like at the bottom, there's that little live share thing. If it's checked in with a black dot, uncheck it. And then what it'll do is it'll reset it all. So like if you accidentally click somebody else or you like anytime you click out of it, I think it resets. So you just have to go back in there and make sure, and then it'll just reset itself.
You might manually have to switch it over where you have like now a shitload of files that it's trying to live share. So you might just have to manually switch between applications or between files.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because like your back end, I don't know, when you was doing your front end stuff, it wasn't tracking that for me. So I had to click on the front end in order to see it.
Yeah, so maybe we should just like restart the live share. I don't know. I think mine's is working because I got like a later copy of the live share though. So I'm not sure if that was why.
Well, yours still isn't switching over to the front end code that I just wrote, right? Like I'm on the app.js front end code, and that didn't open for you until you switched over to it manually.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see what y'all saying. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
I will attempt to. Oh shit. All right, I have to do two separate live shares. Sorry. The reason why it's not following me is because the live share that I have started is over in this window here. And then I was making changes in this window over here. So even though the files you have access to, it's still not following you in this one. So keep your existing backend live share open, and then I am going to share the front end live share. Sorry, you do need 2 separate live shares to follow along.
Okay, yeah. I think I'll just follow the Zoom.
I mean, would that like have been the case if, let's say, you did your front end and your back end in the same window and use the live share? Would it work that way for you? I know
It would,
technically,
but
but
it won't work for my brain. My brain has to have the front end and the back end separated. But yes,
Yeah.
theoretically, if I did it all in one window, it would work.
okay.
So give you guys a minute. If you want to join the front end live share, you can. If you want to just follow along in Zoom, that's also fine. Whatever works for your flow. So what we should have at this point is a little to-do list app. Words matter. To-do list app with a new task, a little text, and an add button. So the goal is to CRUD. We have to be able to create a to-do list task. We need the ability to read those tasks from the database. We need the ability to update those tasks, the text of them or the done status, and we need the ability to delete those tasks. That's the goal for the evening. Does anyone not have an interface that looks like this in their localhost 3000? Taylor. Okay, add task is not defined. That's because you are missing this little snippet of code. Anyone else?
Me too, and I'm not really sure why.
Share screen. You're on 3001, not 3000. Okay, now you don't have your front end running. So are you trying to do it all in one window, or do you have your front end in a different one?
Yeah, so now they're all in one. They're all in one.
Okay, so you need to do the same thing that Jen is doing. You see how it says backend up here?
Yeah.
What we're gonna do is right click on your package.json that's in your front end and open an integrated terminal, and then npm start. Oh.
Oops. Sorry.
Yep. Enter there. And now it will open your 3000 in 1 second, but keep in mind that you've got 2 terminals open. You've got your backend terminal here, and then your front end terminal here, which is okay. Just keep in mind that you've got 2 of them. And then the only thing that you're missing is your const at task, which is going to get an event. And what did I put in mine? Event prevent default.
Yay. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're also missing the button. Just compare my code to your code. I've got a button type submit.
Okay.
Jen, I've got nothing for you on that. You're sure it's set to the right thing in preferences?
Yeah, I restarted it and everything before I got into class today. It's being stupid.
I don't have anything for you there. Sorry. All right. Anyone else need help? We've got our to-do list app here. We're over the hard part. We've got everything set up. We've got our interface started. We've got our API running. Now we get to do the fun of the full stack. All of this stuff is the crappy project setup, right? We're over that hump. The project is set up. We can now just start running with this and start making our API calls. So let's do that. We want a new task to go from our front end, our client, to our back end, our backend is going to take that and run a SQL query to put it in the database. Then the database is going to confirm that it inserted that and tell the front end, all right, we're good to go, that's inserted. We then are going to make a read query that does that all over again. So let's look at how we do that. I am in my add task, and I am going to say, hey, I need something asynchronous. So I am going to add in my async keyword up at the top of the add task. I am then going to say my const response is awaiting a fetch to my local host 3001. And we are going to go to the add task endpoint. We are then going to provide some additional information to the fetch. We are going to tell it we are using the method post. We also need to tell it, hey, we are going to send a content type of application JSON. And finally, we are going to send in a body that is a stringified version that says the task is going to be the event target elements task text. Now, one other thing that we've got to add on this front end here, this task text, we need to tell it is the name of the input. So we just did all of this code up here, but we also need to add in our name task text down here.
Max, quick question.
Yes.
You put the, I don't know if I'm gonna pronounce right, but the async, why do we have to put that in order for the await to?
Because for whatever reason, JavaScript doesn't know how to await something if we give it a heads up that the function that we're running has some await keyword in it. So whenever we need to use the await keyword, we have to put the async keyword in the function up at the top. It's just a JavaScript requirement, and it will throw an error very quickly. And like, even if I take this out, you'll see it goes red right away. And it says, it will give you an error message along the lines of wow, I'm surprised it's because I didn't take the whole word out. Duh, Max. It will tell you parsing error, unexpected reserved word await. So whenever you get that error, it's just saying like it isn't expecting to await anything because I didn't tell it that it is async. So as soon as you put in that async, it makes it go away. And you may have some warnings down in your terminal and your front end. That's okay. We'll get around to fixing them.
Thank you.
All right. Now we've got no way to test this yet because we only did this on the front end. So now, yeah, Shannon, by saying async here, it's just telling it that at some point it is going to have an await keyword or multiple await keywords in that code. Okay, so now we've got all of this in our add task. We're going back over to our backend. And we have to tell it, hey, because we're sending in application.json, the server also needs to use express.json. So we tell it, all right, we're going to send in some JSON. Make sure you understand that you're ready to parse that. And what I'm going to do is server.post. Why is it a post? Because it's lining up with the post over here. And that post is going to go to a URL called add task. Where's add task coming from? That lines up with the add task over here. Add task is going to get in a request, and it always needs to send back a response. So in our add task, we are going to say, hey, we're going to make a SQL query. That SQL query is going to say, await the database. And because we're using await, we have to use async up here. So we put in our async, we say await a DB query. And I'm going to use my template literal. And I'm going to say insert into my to-dos. And what columns am I going to insert? I am going to insert, and now I have to remember what's going on in my beekeeper. My beekeeper has a column called name. It also has a column called done. So I'm going to put that here. I'm going to say name and done. And then I'm going to insert the values. And the values I'm going to insert are coming from my rec.body dot task. And I'm also going to insert false for done, because when we make a new task, we don't want it to be done automatically. A lot of tricky little syntax there. So keep in mind, we have parentheses at the beginning and the end. We have quotes inside those. And then we do our dollar curly brace syntax for a template literal. Lots of little syntax in here. So make sure that you're taking your time getting all of these right. These have to be backticks. These have to be a curly brace. These have to go in quotes so the SQL knows that whatever text we're dropping in there is a string that we want to insert.
Max,
Yes.
can you explain why we use the backticks again?
We use the backticks because we want to use our $ curly brace syntax. So we can't use the Mad Lib syntax, those $ curly brace without the backticks on the outside. We are using false Shakota because we want false to line up with this done column. When we create a new task, we don't want it to be set as done automatically. We want that new task to be done false so that we can mark it as done down the road.
I also have a question. So we don't add in the ID as like our columns, because that's just one that we automatically get sent in there.
Correct. And we're going to see that in 1 second. But because we set the ID to the serial data type, it will automatically generate that for us and go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
But if we included ID right here, then we would have to assign a number to it. And that's not something that we want to do. We want the database to generate the ID for us. Now, we've got more work to send some information back to the front end, but we just wrote a shitload of code and we have no idea if it's going to work. So we're going to put in a placeholder for now. We're just going to say res.send. Send something back. Doesn't have, nothing's in it. We're just saying we got it. We did something. Go away. You got your response. There's nothing in the response, but the front end just go away. We did something in the database. I do not expect this to work on the first time, but I'm going to try it in my code. And then we're going to spend 20 minutes making sure it works in all of your code. So I save and I make sure my server online port 3001 is showing up. If it's not, we've got a syntax error in our backend that we need to fix somewhere in here. I go to my front end. I type in first task and I hit add. And Jesus God, everything breaks. So first things first, event target elements, task text. I did something wrong here. Please stand by while I debug. Event target elements. Oh. First thing, I got the task text, but my task text is the whole input. So I just tried to send an entire input of HTML over the internet. And my JavaScript's like, nope, don't know how to do that. I only know how to send text. So what we need to do is say, no, I'm only trying to send the value. So over in the front end, make sure you've got .value in here. If you're getting an error message about circular JSON, we should put in the .value. And Kenny, you were spot on. That was totally the problem. So I come over here, I hit my add button, and now I get a failed to fetch. So I gotta step through this stuff. So my terminal over here, I don't have any errors. I come over here, and I have an error message that says error missing column. So I'm going to go look at my beekeeper. I've got my name and I've got my done. And it says error column first task does not exist. I hate Postgres because it uses different quote types and they all mean different things. And I get them wrong every single time. Maybe let's try single quotes. Don't follow me yet until I have this figured out. Scroll down to the bottom, add. Okay. Change your double quotes to single quotes. Postgres likes single quotes for strings, for content that we're entering. It uses double quotes for something else, and I can never remember when it's single quotes or double quotes or backticks. So use single quotes when you are trying to insert content. So we should have single quotes here and here, not double quotes. Now I don't have any errors. So I'm like, well, what did that do? Well, we're running an insert command. That insert command is happening in our database. So if I go back to Beekeeper and I double click on my to-dos folder, I have apparently 13 new tasks. No idea how I got 13 of them. I'm going to go make sure that something isn't broken. I'm actually going to... No, you're not going to let me delete multiple ones. Okay, well, I'm going to put in second task and hit add. And then come back over here, hit refresh, and I get my second task. So if you had a bunch of them, I did to deserve 13 different first tasks. Of course, it's the number 13, but raise your hand if it's not working. We're going to go step by step and debug with you guys. You saw that it took me 2 steps to debug, right? First thing I had was I didn't have the .value in here. I was trying to send the entire HTML input. Second bug that I had was that I didn't have the right quote type. These need to be single quotes. What should be working, and then I will help you guys through this, you should be able to type something in here, click the add button, nothing will happen in the front end, but if you come over to your Beekeeper, double click on the to-dos table and click on the refresh down here, you should see whatever you typed in flowing all the way to the database. Allie, you're up first.
Okay, so all right, I'm gonna share my screen first.
Yep.
But I'm looking over here and it says syntax error. I'm missing like a parentheses over here. So I came over here to look. Hold on, let me X this out.
It is in your backend.
It's over
And
here.
your, yep, that semicolon shouldn't, save and scroll all the way to the bottom of that terminal. So that's an old error in the terminal. Scroll down to the bottom.
Oh, here?
Yep. Okay, and now let me just request remote.
Okay.
So now you probably have a different error that it says await is only valid in async functions. We can't await unless we async here.
Okay. All right.
So we scroll down. Now you're back online. So we're going to come over here. We're going to refresh. We're going to say first task and hit add. Nothing appeared to happen, but it didn't crash the terminal, which is a good sign. So we go over to Beekeeper and we hit the refresh button. And you got nothing. Okay, so let's look at, you've got to do here. That's right. You've got insert into to do. Ah, you are missing a slash.
Okay. Perfect.
So we save, we hit add task. Nothing crashed over here. We refresh. Well, almost. Okay, so we've got undefined here. We got to figure out why that's undefined. So we're looking for the rec.body.task. Well, if we look in your app.js, when you send it in, you're sending in the task, but we need a capital T in our content type.
Okay.
So I'm going to delete this one just so it doesn't aggravate us. I'm going to hit add here. I'm going to refresh over here. Ooh, I thought that was it. Add task, application JSON, JSON stringify, task text, the value, the stringify, server, post add task, rec body task, express JSON. It just hates you. Task, event, target, element, task text, value. Okay.
There's something weird going on with my VS Code. Like it wouldn't let me right click and then open the terminal that way. So I had to do it from up above. So I don't know. Maybe there's something.
All right. So we're going to debug. I put in a console log rec.body. And what this is going to do is it's going to tell us, is the data getting to the server and it's the problem with our query? Or is the data not getting to the server and it's the problem on our front end? So we're trying to debug and separate those two out. So I'm going to hit add here. And it's empty here. So that means that there's got to be a problem. It's not a problem here. It's got to be a problem either with our JSON, which you've got set up right there. And that all looks right. So it's got to be an issue on our front end. So we're going to look at our front end. And we've got our hearers.
Oh, okay.
So let's fix that with our headers. And add. And refresh. And there's our first task.
Okay, thanks.
So now we took out the console log and you're good to go. So that's a good example of like, it took what, 100 and some lines of code to make all of that work. So sometimes we need to put in those console logs and debug it and go, all right, the data isn't getting here. So the problem isn't with our SQL query. It's got to be before that. And that's how we break it down. Kenny, I don't think they are case sensitive. I don't know. There's something called HTTP headers. And there's like an official list of all the ones that you can use on MDN. And then there's also Wikipedia has them as well. And if you look at content type, they do have it in as a capital T. So I believe it is preferred to be a capital T. But it is not a requirement apparently on all servers. It might cause issues somewhere else. Shannon, you're up.
17.
Hi.
Oh.
So mine in my beekeeper is showing up first task, second task, but now it's not showing anything. And on my server, I keep getting an error and I'm looking at it and I don't know
Okay.
where
sure
the
thing.
issue is.
We're just gonna clear it and Control C it to stop it, Control C to restart it. Then go back to your front end and try and add a task. And then go, yeah.
Nothing.
So there's got to be something wrong with your SQL query. Oh, but it's not. But oh, is it because this is no add task headers application JSON task text server post insert into values. Okay. So let's look at your no, see, but add task, prevent default, form on submit, type submit. So okay, clear all of this, add. So I is very confused. It's on 3001. You've got your post in there. You're going to post. You're using your add task, which you clearly have right there.
Is there an extra back tick somewhere? No, never mind.
Okay, let's back it up a little bit. Let's go 3001 and refresh. And you get your server online, so that's not the problem. Let's await the query, name done, values, task, false, body. It's coming, it's parsing. Seriously confused. It's starting it. Refresh. Test. Add. Oh, I think that worked. Test. Okay. You just need to refresh on your front end. Everything was right. And I was like, you had something that wasn't working on the front end and refreshing it just cleared the gunk out.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Tara.
I'm just getting no data in my beekeeper.
Okay, share screen.
Right.
Okay, so your backend is crashing. So we are going to start there
How do you know it's crashing?
because I see a big NodeMon app crashed. Give me remote.
Oh no, that's on yours. This is yours. This one is mine over here.
Oh, mine crashed. Oh, we're gonna have, okay, well, I'm glad break is coming up because I have to dig into that. On yours, everything looks right. We are in the right table. We refresh, we've got no data, add task.
Oh, I did put the console log when I was following before, thinking that maybe that
Oh,
was
yeah.
my issue too.
Yep,
But
that's
it
fine.
didn't do anything.
And
so-
then your front end header, stringify, value, add task. Okay, everything looks right there. So we're gonna do our TEST and we're gonna hit add. And you notice how that text disappeared and it looks like the whole page refreshed?
Mhm.
Do it again. Whenever we see that behavior, it is because in your front end, you were missing a capital S. This
Oh,
event prevent default should have been working, but this is all right, and you've got access to the event right. So I'm like, all right, there's got to be something going on with the actual event that links that together. That capital S was causing it to not trigger your submit right. So if I do a test, notice that text doesn't go away. Now,
yes.
when I come over here and refresh, you've got your test and you're good to go.
Oh my gosh. And I looked through that, looking back and forth. Thank you.
Yep,
I
no problem.
couldn't miss it.
Anyone else need help?
Hmm.
Everyone good? Everyone get their text showing up? We will spend time at the end of class commenting out our code, practicing on all of that. I'm going to figure out what's going on with the backend crashing. When we come back, we've got our C done, our create done. When we come back, we're going to get our R done. We're going to try and shoot for U and D, update and delete. And then we will make sure everything's annotated and make sure we are football diagramming it out so everyone understands. And then we will call it a successful equivalent of our Friday. You don't have to use your own API. You can use a third-party API if you're integrating data in from that. You don't have to set up your own. But a lot of people will do a login screen on their capstone, and that will also meet all the requirements of the capstone. Go on break, be back at...
Aaron, oh, sorry.
Oh,
Sorry,
you're
I
fine.
was calling my daughter.
Go on break, be back at 7:25. All right, we are almost over the finish line, and then we will do a recap for everything that we have covered so far tonight. So, where did we leave off? We've got a whole full stack flow going on. We have our add task endpoint. We set it up as a post. We sent in some data that was coming from our form. We then came over to our backend and we set up that endpoint and we executed that insert going on over here. Okay, all of that's cool, but the data is like just in Beekeeper. We now need to be able to see our data over here in our to-do list app. So what we are going to do, the problem is if we console log out this insert query, you'll notice that there's nothing in the rows here. It turns out that when we run an insert query, it doesn't return any of the data in the database. It's just saying, hey, you inserted it. It's not saying, here's everything that you inserted. So what we need to do is we're going to still do our query to insert the data, but then we need another query to say, hey, the result from the database, we're going to await another db.query. And this time, we are going to select everything from our to-dos table. Then we are going to send back our to-dos from our db result dot rows. So we run our insert, we then do our select, then we send all of that data back to the front end. Okay, well, now we got to tell our front end that that data is coming. So I'm going to move that over. I'm going to come over here. And I'm going to say, hey, my data is going to come from awaiting my response.json. And Express is automatically converting our data here into JSON so that when we get it to the front end, we can parse it out. Once it is parsed out, we can console log out that data. And when I go look in my browser, when I inspect, I can see my to-dos is an array with all of this data inside of it. Okay, well, because we're working with data, we need to const to-dos and set our to-dos, which is going to come from a use state, which is going to start out as an empty array. We are then going to set our to-dos to our data.todos. And then we are going to make a, let's make it a UL. And we are going to to-dos.map to get each to-do. And we are going to return a list item with the to-do.name. And it is mad at me because I use state without importing it. And now, if I add a task, now note I have to add a task here. So I'm going to add test and hit add, and you'll see all of my tasks show up. And if I come in here and say test 2 and hit add, the next task shows up there. Sorry, unfortunately can't fit all of this on the screen, but we imported our use state. We set up our to-dos. We then took our data coming back from the response and parsed out the JSON. Then we took our to-dos, which are coming from our response that's getting sent back from the database result of all the rows. And we set our to-dos. And because we set our to-dos down in our to-dos.map, we are looping over each to-do and making each one show up as a list item, then pulling the name out of the to-do, which is coming all the way back from our database. So in your browser, once you've got all your code in, add one more new task, then hit the add button, and you should have all of the tasks in your database show up. And to fix the key error, now that we finally have IDs coming from the database, we can say key is our to-do.id. No, Kenny, I now don't have the key error. Thank you for the reminder. So if you get this error, good reminder, whenever you map over data, you should throw a key on it. Everyone good? Anyone need help? Anyone not get their task showing up in the browser after they add a new task?
Where did you see that warning for the key?
In the console in the browser
Ah, gotcha.
down here. I didn't stop the live share. Should still be good. Okay, it happens. I've sent more than one message to the wrong channel accidentally.
I'm dying right now.
All right, anyone need help? Everyone get this up and running? All right, so the last thing that we are missing, Allie, I'll give you one more minute.
I just need like the rest of the app dot.
This to-dos is what we added in, this UL and the to-dos. And then we also did this const data and the set to-dos.
I'm good.
Okay. So this is cool. This is all working. But as soon as we refresh the page, everything clears out. And I'm like, well, that's not ideal. What's happening is all this data is in Beekeeper still. The problem that we're running into is that this code only sets the to-dos when the data comes back when we add a task. What it isn't doing is going through and getting it on page load. So in order to prevent an infinite loop, what we need to do is do a use effect. Our use effect is going to const make an API call, which is going to be async. It is only going to run this use effect when the page first loads. So do not forget your empty parenthesis down there. You will get an infinite re-render error message if you do not have this empty array down at the bottom. We're going to make our API call. And then I'm going to go borrow most of this code. I'm going to say, hey, my fetch is going to come in. And this time it is just going to get my tasks. We are still going to parse the JSON. We're still going to set our data to our to-dos. But now we run into a problem. We have our add task set up, but what we don't have is our API call for our tasks. So try and leave this on the screen. We are going to switch over to our backend. And in our backend, we are going to server.get our tasks, which is going to be an async recres. And we are going to just copy our select query here and return it back right here. So I save, I refresh, I come over here, and all my tasks show up when the page first loads. So this use effect is a new section of code, and this server.get tasks is a new section of code.
Are you getting an error in the window? Oh, never mind.
Anyone need another minute or need help? Okay. We're gonna break this down because at this point, we still need to get update, delete. We still need to get update working. We still need to be able to mark something done. We still need to be able to delete items, but it's more important that we're understanding how this is working than adding any additional features. What we want to get you to the point is saying, hey, next week, the end of next week, I'm feeling confident enough about my server setup that I can set up a server, I can connect it to the database, I can do something on my front end and have it save into the database, and I can make that full stack flow work. Notice I didn't say the end of class today. I said the end of class next week. So it is okay to not be completely comfortable with every step that we have done at this point. What is more important is that we can identify how is this code flowing. Unfortunately, we reached the point where I just can't fit everything on my screen to be able to trace through every step. I will go through and number everything. So what do you mean at the end of class, Jen?
The end of the whole class. All the weeks.
I'm gonna just pull up every line of code we've written since the beginning of time and put it all on my monitor, and then we'll get a magnifying glass for all of you guys. And kidding, but it is important to identify the flow here, right? Because while it makes sense while you're following along with it, it's more important to be able to say, all right, what order is the computer doing this? How is this running? How is this flowing? As a junior developer, I would actually go print out my code all the time, right? I would actually go file print. I would get 2 different pieces of paper. I would scotch tape them together, and I would get out a marker and draw those lines. So the lines that I draw on the screen all the time, that's what helped me understand the code, right? Because oftentimes you're going to be starting at a company and they're going to have 1,000 lines of code that they just hand to you and go, hey, we need this new feature. Well, you can't possibly add something new when you don't understand how the existing stuff is working. You don't have to build the existing stuff from scratch, but you do need to have a level of understanding, right? So if you are a visual person, I highly recommend printing out this code and actually writing on top of it, right? Because drawing those lines is really helpful for connecting everything together. But let's pump the brakes here. Let's figure out how this is working. And at any point you don't understand what comment I'm writing or why we're doing that, raise your hand or come off mute and scream bloody murder.
Hey, before you start that,
No questions.
No, I don't want to. Damn it, I do have
Go
a
ahead.
question, but not really. Is there like some kind of website or something where we can find all the steps written out, like your comments, but without the code? Where it's like, first you need to do this, and then we can try and write the code for that, and then we can do this. Is there like a step-by-step guide of this is what you need to do?
Check in the CICC 5 channel and see if that is along the lines of what you were looking for, because Latonia has been doing that all night for you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry, I stopped after the first half though. Don't hate me.
But a lot of those steps are there. It is more important to. This is one thing that I have learned in all the years of teaching this, is while the steps of like, oh, we need to set up the back end, and you know, we do the require and express and whatever. those are fine to think of step by step. But what you really want to get your level to is like, oh, I need to npm install something, so I need to be in the right spot in the terminal, right? So you want to go at a certain point beyond just the step by step and think about it as, this is the concept, right? I'm setting up the server, I'm installing some stuff. Because I'm installing it, I have to be in the right spot in the terminal, all of that. So there is, and the reason why that's important is because you're going to go get a job and they're going to say, we don't use Node, we use Python and we use Django. And you're going to be like, okay, well, how do I get Django started? It's not going to be npm start, right? It's going to be some other command. So you're going to have to look that up in the documentation, but you're still going to have to be in the right spot in the terminal. The terminal is still going to be the same. So it's more about thinking about the objective of what you're trying to do, not the steps that it takes to accomplish that objective. So if you can think about it and get yourself to the point of, I'm thinking about what I'm trying to do, it becomes easier to do the step-by-step of doing it. Does that make sense at all? Is that too meta?
Well, now you're making me gather all of my ingredients before I start cooking.
Oh, okay, let's go through this. Interrupt me at any point and we can make sure we're understanding it. This is not going to be in the order that necessarily we wrote the code. This is the order that the computer is executing it. So we are going to start at the top. Number 1. Require /import packages we installed from npm in the terminal. 2, use the packages from 1 to get our server set up with cores and JSON. Number 3, configure the Postgres database client to connect to the to-do database that we created in Postgres. Number 4, connect to the DB that we configured in 3. 5, set up an endpoint to make sure our server is running. Then we skip over this post, we skip over the get, and we go all the way down to the listen. And we say 6, tell the server to listen to requests from 3000 on port 3001. Then start the server in the terminal. Do we have any questions about any of those steps? Okay, so now we jump over to our front end. We do our imports. Hopefully that's self-explanatory. We say 7, set up a place in state to store the data coming from the DB database. Whenever you see DB, it's an acronym for database. Okay, then we say 8, when the component first loads, make an API call. Let's do this. EA, EB. Make an async function, we'll say. C, make API call to tasks endpoint in backend. This 8C now jumps over to 9. Tasks endpoint requested from front end. Requested. So we 10 use DB from 3 and 4 to run a select query on the to-dos table to get the data. And then we respond res to the front end with the data from the query from number 10. Now we 12 parse the JSON in the response, and 13 set the data from 11 in the backend into our state from 7. Then we come down to 14 and we map loop over each to do from the state, which holds the info from the DB, and 15 make a LI show up for each item that uses the name call from the DB rows. Stop there. Is that the order that you understood it? Is there anything in those 15 steps that if I told you to do that step, you wouldn't understand how that step was working?
Max, could you
Yes.
go over 8C and 9?
Let me see what I can do. Okay, 8C. It's kind of a 3-stepper, right? Use effect is when the component first loads. So that's what this and this are doing. Otherwise, what ends up happening is when we set the to-dos, it gets stuck in a loop because we're trying to update the data, and the components loading thinks that we want to go make the API call again. It gets the API data, it sets it into state, it sees the components loading again, it loops. So that's why we need the 8A. We need the 8B because we need to be able to call this async. And for whatever reason, React doesn't like it when we put the async keyword up here. It's stupid, don't ask me why, but what we end up doing is making this API call and then we call it right down here. What you asked about though is 8C. Make the API call to the tasks endpoint in the backend. So what we do is we line a couple pieces of this up. The 3001, the port that it's listening on, lines up with the 3001 right here. Localhost is just saying it's on our computer. You don't have to go out onto the internet yet. Over time, when we deploy that, this localhost is going to become your domain name. But right now, because we're running everything locally, we say just go over to 3001. Now, what it lines up is 2 parts. One, this /tasks here lines up with the tasks here. That's how we can set up multiple routes, multiple endpoints. I mean, kind of the same thing, so that we can have multiple kinds of information get requested from our API. What the second part lines up on is this get. Now, that's more evident here when we say method post. That lines up with our .post right here. But when we don't specify a method in our fetch, it assumes that we want to use get and defaults to that. So now all we have done is we said, hey, go fetch. I am making a request. I am fetching the request to go get the tasks from my API server on 3001. So what this fetch does here is trigger all of the code that is running in here. What triggers is this request, and then that request is expecting us to use this response. So whenever this fetch happens, this code in the backend is going to run because the get, the tasks, and the port all line up. The method, the URL, and the port. So if we refresh the page 100 times, this code in the backend is going to run 100 times. Now we do our database query and we get those results, and that's firing through Postgres and whatever, and we're res sending something back. So the res is coming in from up here and is sending it back to the thing that requested it right here, and it's storing it in the response. So whatever is coming in right here is what actually ends up in this response, technically after we parse out the JSON. So data here lines up with the same exact data that is getting sent back right here. Did that help at all?
It did, thank you.
Anyone need another minute to keep going on this, or should we keep numbering out the last steps here? Okay, so let's finish this out. Computer's done. It's not doing anything until we come down to our input and we say, where were we? 15, 16? 16 sounds right. 16. Task text is typed into input. Submit add button is clicked. On submit add task function is triggered, which means 19 add task is triggered from 18. 20, we tell the browser not to refresh the page because we control the API call we want to happen. 21, make a request to the backend to add task endpoint. Add task is triggered from 21 on the front end. Using the data from the body of the request, just going to put 23, C23. Using the data from the body of the request, we are able to access the value of the input from the form submission and drop it into an insert query that runs in the database. Okay, that we can try and trace through here. We've got this thing called task text. Task text is getting submitted to add task. Add task is running up here and is getting the value out from the task text input down here. We then send that in to the body of the add task. So the body here is being accessed, the body as part of the request. So this task right here is lining up with this task right here. So we are taking that entire insert query and running that insert query, which is including the task text. With that recap, reread 23, see if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, that's probably the most important part of all night, seeing how that data is flowing all the way into the database. So if you're not getting that, let me know. And God knows I'm good at word vomit.
It's, I can't get it. I can't understand it. That's the only reason why it looks like it.
You can change your color scheme.
I like the green.
All right, let's finish this off. 24. After the task is inserted, I realize that I'm using to-dos half the time and tasks the other time. I'm using them interchangeably, so apologies if that's confusing. After the task is inserted into the DB from 23, select all the tasks from the database. '25, send back the data from 24 in the response to the request from 21. We come all the way back to our front end. We 26 parse the data from 25 on the back end, from the back end. 27 set state to our data, and then we come down here and we say 14 and 29, 28, 28, because we are setting the to-dos that are being mapped over here recognize that there is a new to-do there. So it runs through this again, recognizes that there's a new ID that it hasn't made make show up before. And because of that, it is now re-looping over them and making that new task show up. So I guess this is 15 and technically 29. Not including all of the server setup that we did tonight. It's a simple 29-step solution to make a to-do app that is now accessible over the internet. So if you are questioning all of this and going, well, all the backend stuff is stupid, I'm just going to use local storage. Okay, well, the thing is now that I've got my database set up, I can actually open a new tab and go to localhost 3000 and have all of my tasks in here. And once this is deployed out on the internet, I could send my to-do list to someone else and they could add items to the to-do list and I would be able to see them. Because while multiple people may have copies of the front end, there's only one API server and one database that all of those information, all of those tasks are getting sent to. So while 100 different people could have the front end open, because they're all using that one API server that I've deployed, and that one API server is connected to one database, all of that information is going to get shared in together. So we have two options here. We can either make the done work and the delete work. Or what I'm going to suggest is that instead what we should do is pause here tonight for any new code. And instead what I would like you to do, thank you, Jen, for this assignment idea, is
Don't pin
to
that on me.
write out the steps in order, and my code is going to be posted, but using your own words, write out the steps that it takes in order to make this code work.
I vote done button.
Well, let me put it like this. If you want to do the done button now, you're going to have to do that for homework over the weekend. So let me create that assignment in Canvas. Let me get this code uploaded so that you have that to reference. And then I will give you the option. If you would like to see how to make the done button work, you can stick around and we can do that. If you would like to just go work on this assignment and have 25 minutes of your time back, that is also fine. Give me 2 minutes to just get this created and uploaded. Okay, that is created in Canvas. You don't have to do it in line in your code. If you can just go into Canvas, hit the number button, and just put out every step using your own words. I will offer you an alternative. If you would instead like to print out your code and draw lines between how everything is flowing, you can print that out, tape your pages together, draw lines between each one of the steps, and upload a picture of that instead. So I will give you that alternative. I do think that doing the text and writing out the steps will be more helpful for you. But if you are a visual person, if you don't like writing words out, you can do that visually. You can print out the code, or if you can get it all in one PDF, that's totally fine. And just draw lines to connect everything together. You can also do that instead. Do we have any questions about the assignment? We are over the 3/4 point line, 3/4 of the way done. So the yeets become more frequent at this point. You have to be pushed out of the nest. Keep in mind, I could push you out of the nest and say, now go build a backend for your capstone, but I'm not that cruel. Next week, we'll get there. This week, we're just making sure we understand the flow of all of this. Yes, Shay, it's just explaining the steps in your own words, and you can even follow all of the numbers. And if you end up with like 20 steps instead of 29, that's totally fine. Like, don't make yourself go nuts there. But it's more from the how could I explain how this code is working? Because in the workforce, just writing the code isn't enough. You also will have to be able to explain it and say, hey, this is why I wrote it this way. This is what that code is doing. And Rain, I'm not stopping you. If you want to get your backend server set up for your capstone, power to you. We will get more experience doing that next week. We will get a little bit of practice. The only concept two concepts we haven't covered. One is authentication, making the login work. And then the other is there's a slightly more efficient way that we're going to be working with the database. Where we won't need SQL, but we'll still be using a SQL database. So we'll see that next week. We're going to be working on the chat app next week. The other thing, and I'm kind of hijacking this off of a suggestion Latonia had, is ChatGPT is not cheating. So if you would like to, you can head over to I just Google ChatGPT. It will be the first link that comes up. Go ahead, log in. I'll log in with my Google account. And you can do something like and this is on the fly, I haven't done this, but if we take something like this whole snippet of code and say, explain the following code to me, and help it out, say the following React JavaScript code to me, and hit enter on that, you will see, let's see. Okay, so it's given us a little breakdown here, and it's saying, all right, it's React code. It is the process of adding a new task to a task list using an API. Yeah. It's the function declaration. That's our add task here. Then it's doing the prevent default, and it's telling you it prevents the browser from refreshing the page. Then it tells you it's making a post request to the endpoint at add task. It's telling you what the method, the headers, and the body are all doing. It's telling you it's extracting the task text from the input field in the form. Then it's handling the response with the JSON. It is extracting the data out of the to-dos. And it is also doing the state update to set all of that data in. Now, if you copied and pasted this whole thing in, I don't know that you would get that much out of it, right? You might. but it is definitely worth going through here. And the only caution, the only point of concern I will give you on ChatGPT, ChatGPT does not know when it is wrong. That is the biggest thing about AI right now. It will be 100% confident in every answer that it gives you, even though that answer might be wrong. In this case, didn't do anything wrong, right? It explained everything out, and then it gave you a little summary of it. So if you're stuck on the homework and you're reading my comment and you're like, I really don't remember what this is doing, copy and paste it into ChatGPT. You can see the question, explain the following React JavaScript code to me. And I just copied and pasted that sucker in, and yeah, it gave me a much better answer than my shitty numbers that I put in my inline comments, right? So this is something that a lot of teachers will be like, how dare you cheat on that? Doesn't matter. We just need a level of understanding. And if an AI is going to explain it better to you or help you get that concept on an additional layer of what you're getting in class, what you're practicing in your assignments, what you're putting into your capstone, totally lean into this. I wouldn't necessarily trust this if I said something like, write a React app, write a to-do list React app that uses an API to store the data. Pretty damn close. Using a use effect, it's fetching the to-dos. Fetch to-dos is what we called make API call. This fetch to-dos is making a fetch. It remembered my 3001. It's going to my to-dos. It's got the JSON. It's setting the data. The data is going up into state. The only thing that we didn't do is it used a controlled component instead of a uncontrolled component. It still had our on click. It did not do a form tag. Now, I don't like this approach because if you hit the enter button on this input, this button wouldn't trigger. So you would actually have to click the button. So the form tag's a slightly better way of doing it, but it is triggering that. It is doing our add task. It's doing the post. It is getting a response, but look at what it's not doing. Because it didn't know what's going on in our back end, it didn't take the results of our response and set it into state. So this actually wouldn't have worked, but you can't really blame the AI, right? The AI doesn't know what the back end code looks like. And so the kind of cool thing here is because I did this in the same conversation thread, Ali, it is using state and it is incorporating that in. So we could say something like, the to-dos endpoint is returning all the tasks in the database. Can you update the code to include the data in the response and set that into the state? And sure as shit, here's our to-dos. The response, it's parsing the JSON and taking that data and setting it into the state. Now, granted, I know enough about this code to be able to identify that and go, wait a second, this response isn't actually setting anything into our state. So you do have to know what to ask, but when you come down here and you ask it response, here's our fetch to-dos. Notice it's now doing that in our fetch, but it still isn't doing it in our add task. So once it gets this response, it's not setting the data that it gets back from that. But this looks like fully valid code to us, right? So you do have to be careful. You shouldn't completely rely on this, but it is certainly a tool to help you understand how this code is working. Do we have any questions? See, I stopped just one level short of extra crispy on your brains tonight. We just went to crispy tonight.
Tried, well done.
Enjoy your weekends. Don't feel that you have to go super detailed in that homework assignment. That homework assignment is for you guys to understand this, right? We're going to get more practice. We're going to do it over and over again. We will layer in more complexity. We're going to start the chat app and do the server setup. We're going to get it down to 30 minutes on Monday. We're going to keep on going on this. Have an awesome weekend. I will stick around for a couple extra minutes in case anyone has questions. Otherwise, I will see you all on Monday. Next week, you have alumni presentations coming up to look forward to. Got a couple people coming in talking about React Native and how to take notes on something that you're not understanding, and lots of cool stuff coming up. I think that's next Wednesday. So cool stuff coming down the pipeline, and Ryan coming back in for off the week after that. Jen, what's up? Oh, sorry, Rain, go ahead.
Just quickly, excuse me, Jen. Once we're done with the cohort, and let's say, for instance, we want to, like, you know, go back through videos, get a better understanding, can we still schedule one-on-ones with like alumni and whatnot?
Yep. We do a an hour, well,
I know we have open hack that we can still go to afterwards.
Yep. Still have open hack. We don't kick you out of Slack. We put you in a alumni channel so that you can engage with not only people from your cohort, but from previous cohorts as well. And then we also I offer a one monthly one-on-one session with me. So you can schedule up to one a month and meet with me. Most TAs, it depends on like where our funding is at, but for the most part, you should be able to meet with other TAs as well, and still have those sessions paid. That's a little bit more of a gray area depending on where our funding is. But yes, we certainly don't kick you out of the community, and you still have access to at least one-on-ones with me, if not the rest of the TA network.
That's good to know. Just one last thing. I don't know if anyone's seen it on LinkedIn, but I think it's called Talentify, I want to say. They have a junior software engineering remote position open. They want like extremely like entry level type people, starting off at 95,000. It should be in your inbox. Only 300 people so far have applied for it, but I mean, if anyone feel like they're up to it, it wouldn't hurt. You know, we've done our resume with Laura and everything, so just look out for that.
You have the link, like the direct link?
Yeah, I do. If you don't mind me just sharing my screen, I could show everybody too.
Yeah, that's fine. Go for it.
Cool. Sure, I don't have any hinte up. Let me be quiet. Okay, 1 second. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, it came through on my LinkedIn, and here it go right here. Oh God, is that 500? Oh, well, it was at 300 yesterday, but I mean, oh, it's no longer accepting applications. Well, thank you for the stage, Max. Okay, let me unshare.
Got to get in quick.
You got to get in there quick, man.
Jen, do you have a question?
How has ChatGPT not put all of you guys, every code person out of business. Like,
All right, I'll go get my whiskey and sob now. No, I'm just kidding.
I was just looking at it and I was like, this makes me want to cry. Like, learning this is not, it's obviously not an easy thing. And then you just pop this in here and it gives you the whole code and you're like, nah.
One thing, Shannon, Open Hack is next Thursday, but you'll be hearing from the grads on Wednesday during class time. Yeah, I will be out next Wednesday. The grads will be speaking instead, and then on Thursday I'll be at Open Hack and can answer any questions that you have. So Jen, the answer to that is a to-do list app, kind of basic, right? Like, yes, it was 29 steps for us. Yes, it was hard because we had all the full stack, all of that stuff, right? But if we take a step back and think about this as, well, someone probably isn't going to hire you to do a to-do list app, or if they do, they're going to want a to-do list app that you can sign in, that multiple people can manage their lists, that probably support multiple lists, that have some notion of reminders in it, that, right, like when you think about a to-do list app that you download off the App Store, or even the one built into your phone, there are 19 gazillion features that we haven't even started here. And then you're going to get user feedback that are going to want more features, or you're going to have bugs that pop up. ChatGPT is helpful for the little mini apps that we're doing in class. But if you ask ChatGPT to go build a full stack capstone for you using Express and React and Postgres, no way would it create something that you could just copy and paste, run the start command, and have it work. So ChatGPT is great for code snippets. It's great for breaking it down. It's great for doing it in reverse, taking a code snippet and being like, this is working. Can you explain this to me? What it isn't going to be able to do, go all the way back to week one of the software development lifecycle, where you have to plan everything out. You have to know what stack you're going to be using. You have to gather customer requirements. You have to build a wireframe. ChatGPT just made this to-do list app, but I can't be like, no, I want it to have a sidebar on the side and then a nav bar on the top. And well, you can keep on going back and forth with it, but at a certain point, it's just going to be easier to go learn how to write the code and write the code yourself. So 10 years from now, that might not be my response, right? 10 years from now, our jobs are going to look very different. There is a application called Copilot that is built, that is a Microsoft, no, is it GitHub? I can't remember. Microsoft owns GitHub, so it doesn't really matter. But Copilot is bringing AI into our VS Code, into our text editor. And it is making it so that while we're writing that code and we say const and put our state in, it will autocomplete the set and the use state and the parentheses and everything and put the import in for us. So we are already starting to see AI creep into the way that we write code. But at the end of the day, my boss can't say, you're fired, I'm going to go build what you do in ChatGPT, because ChatGPT doesn't know when this code is wrong. And I could copy and paste this and one symbol could be off in the whole thing and everything breaks, right? So like I said, 10 years from now, there will be AI building full stack applications that just do everything for us. So this isn't a technology that we should be afraid of. This isn't a technology that we should pretend doesn't exist. It's out there. It's changed the way that we can get help and we can ask for help. But at the same time, 10 years from now, we probably will be on 6G cellular networks, and the notion of having a Mac to do everything on is going to be ridiculous because everything's going to be augmented reality. And turns out that augmented reality has a whole new set of data that we have to be able to collect and analyze. And 40 years ago, the internet didn't exist, but programmers did. And what were they doing? They were writing programs that sent us to the moon, right? They were writing calculations, and those people now had gone through multiple changes and went to desktop apps and then went to writing server code to writing web applications, right? still need to know how loops work. We still need to know how variables work. We still need some code to write some syntax to build HTML. Maybe the way that we write that user interface is different and in a different language and displaying on a different kind of device, but those concepts are still there. So at no point did ChatGPT come out and me go, oh, I'm just going to quit as a teacher. This does a better job than I do, right? Like 10 years from now, maybe a different story. We're still in that very new phase of this where we're trying to figure it out. So it's more of a tool than a replacement. And I think that a lot of experts, even including the people who build these AI tools, agree with that sentiment.
I think it's just super scary to have computers building computers. We've all seen the movies. We know what's coming next. It's not like you could throw a bucket of water on it. That might not work.
I will say